Hi, it's Cara Brown, and this is Watercolor Conversations. It's a place where I share my love of watercolor and my seeking, my teaching, my discoveries, the connections I see, and just in general what it's like to be alive at this time here on planet Earth. I hope that this meets a part of you that's longing to be met. Thanks for being here. Hi, it's Cara, and I've got a fun episode for you today. This one is based on a post that I did back in 2016. I know these things are old, but they still live. I mean, shoot, we love Shakespeare still, and he was how many centuries ago? Anyway, this one is a post that I wrote about the left and the right brain and how we have some misconceptions about how they work and how this might apply to our art making and our lives. And then I have a fresh analogy about it too because of my dipping into using artificial intelligence and seeing what that is all about. So here we go. There's a couple things in this life that have taken a hold of me. And one of them, I know I inherited this from my dad, an insatiable curiosity. He loved to know about anything, mostly the physical world, but I am compelled to understand how we work as people. Our thinking, our consciousness, attention, awareness, which are things I'm going to do in the next podcast, how evolution works of our consciousness, and how that means that life on Earth might be evolving. The other is the dance between the masculine and the feminine, and I don't mean male and female here, though there is a mapping that can be correlated. It's more than that. It's way more subtle and way more nuanced, I guess. I mean energies, modes, yin and yang, passive and active, receptor, provider. These are elements that we all embody and live out to varying degrees in our lives, regardless of our physical parts. These things came together for me back when I wrote this with some new discoveries. Sister Mary Neal, she was my spiritual director, pointed me to Iain McGilchrist, who is a psychiatrist. He wrote a book called The Master and His Emissary. The title of that book, I'm going to come back to. It's a super dense book. I honestly never really got through the whole thing. I watched his TED Talk, and then I read a shorter ebook called The Divided Brain and the Search for Meaning. And it was enough to get an idea of what he's discovered and the conclusions that he's come to. I found it, and still do, completely fascinating. Also think it's never been more useful to our lives and even to our art making. He explains that how we think of the left and right brain means something completely different. Common thinking have been along the lines that the left brain is rational, logical, language and math-oriented, and deals in symbols, while the right brain is spatial, emotional, and creative, and sees the world in shapes and curves and lines rather than as things. It has been known for some time in the scientific community that this is false, that we use both halves of our brains for language, for visuospatial imagery, for emotion even, and reason. Yet there is a very distinct difference in our two hemispheres, both physically and how they operate. What he reveals in his major tome is this. It is not so much what the two halves of our brain do, it's how they do it that is the differentiator. The left brain has a purpose to narrow down to certainty. The left brain lives in me because I love to know. It is a narrow focus that gets and grasps. It pays attention in service of manipulation. It wants to do stuff. It deals in the world of the known and the understood. It renders things explicit. It tends towards fixity. It sees what it expects to see. It likes the simplicity of the map. It sees the world as individual, separate elements, pieces. It is either or. On the other hand, or on the other brain, the right brain, its purpose is to open to possibility. It has sustained attention with vigilance. It's the part of the bird's brain, while the left brain is out picking for little seeds amongst the gravel, the right brain is listening to hear if there might be a predator. So that's the attention with vigilance. It pays attention in service to connection. It's relational. It deals in newness, drawn to what's fresh, original, unique. It takes in the implicit meanings in things. It tends towards flow as opposed to fixity, and it sees what's really there. It likes the complexity of the territory that the map represents. It sees the world as a web of relationships. It is both and. So if you look at this list, I can see how some of us may have a preference for the right brain, but it goes without saying that we need both in order to function. So that we are not overwhelmed, we have to be able to draw upon what we know and understand already. I cannot imagine a life where everything was new all the time. When I was a teenager and I was learning to drive a manual transmission car, it took all my attention to manage the timing of releasing the clutch as I pressed the accelerator in order to not have the car lurch or the engine die. Yes, my family did not have an automatic transmission car for me to learn to drive in. The way I interpret what he says, this was an engagement of my right brain, but then once I became skilled, how to do this became second nature, and I didn't have to think about it. My intense focus is no longer required every time I get behind the wheel, even in a manual transmission car, but rather my left brain guides my driving based on what I already know. So here's a note. I could be entirely wrong here. What he says may not apply to motor skills. It's just that this is a really powerful memory of learning something new, and to me, it seems relevant. It's also how it goes when we learn to paint. We rely upon our left brains. There's knowledge about paints and pigments, about paper and brushes, about our experiences of working with them that we use to do the work of making our art. If every time we sat to paint, we were enthralled with everything as if it were the first time we used it, we'd never make progress in our skills, and we'd never be able to get better, to grow as artists in our capacity to express what's inside us in our paintings. I also think we use our left brains when we evaluate our work as we go. When I'm in the process of painting something that doesn't quite live like I want it to, I use my powers of evaluation and comparison to determine what information is there for me in my reference image that I'm working from that differs from what I've painted. Is it darker? Or is it a different shape? What might I have left out? I also think that it's our left brain that causes us a lot of heartache in its criticism of what we're painting, especially as it is in progress. The left brain can tend to fixate on little parts of the painting that aren't quite right in its estimation. Just recalling the experience of that kind of thinking, and I feel heavy inside. But it's our right brains that hold the big picture in our work. This is where we respond to composition, where we sense the spark of inspiration that I want to paint this, where we find things interesting. It's where we find the motivation to do our work and the meaning in it. It's also our right brains that have us see what's really there, which is consistent with what I'd previously thought was the domain of the right brain. I take a photo of everyone's painting at the end of each painting session. They often, especially at the beginning of a painting, tell me, there's nothing to take a picture of, Cara, but I insist, as the germ of the genius of their painting is already there, and it becomes really useful and interesting once the painting is done. As well, it's fleeting. As soon as more is painted, that particular state is no more. When the paintings are further along, they are often surprisingly pleased when they see their work in my phone. Since the right brain sees the big picture when we're in progress with our work, it takes distance, which the phone provides, to catch the glimmers of what's coming to be. When we look at the picture in the phone, we can't make the critical judgments as well. So we see the painting more as everyone else does. And we see it's not so bad. There was a painting of mine that I sort of had picked up after banging around the studio for a couple of years, like that whole thing. And I decided to finish it. And I did some pretty major revisions of what I was doing. And I had this super dark background. And I'll post the link to the evolution of this painting in the notes here on this episode. But it's called Firelight. And I had to strip it all off. And that meant I had to use gouache, which is opaque watercolor, in order to make some light sections of it, including some yellow in the leaves and some white spots and whatever. And, just like that thick paint, it's not my thing. So when I finished it, although I really appreciated it, I was kind of like, okay. So I did it. But then when I posted a picture of it online, Lisa Bowles, who is a very special person to me, she was at one point my business coach, and she's an incredibly gifted astrologer and guide to life. She saw it and was absolutely bowled over. She saw it in the way that I couldn't yet, because I was still kind of in my left brain, all the pieces and parts of it. I hadn't been able to see it holistically. It takes time for us to be able to do that sometimes when we are so intimate with our paintings. I often say we have the unenviable job of painting our own paintings because we have to be so dialed in, so close, looking at the pieces and parts. So I have in time, I finished that painting years ago, begun to see that, to see the spirit of that painting, because I am no longer in that make it happen part, but I'm more appreciating the spirit, which is my right brain. We live in a world that is dominated by our left brains. Rules, facts, being certain about things, now more than ever. And Iain McGilchrist makes a super strong case for the need to bring our right brains into our lives more. He even intimates, or maybe not even intimates, he may even claim that our survival may depend on it, that we need to grow our capacities to see the interrelatedness of everything, including us to each other, to have our intuition guide our decisions, to seek meaning in life. He says that the left hemisphere's values are those of utility and pleasure, but meaning cannot come from this linear project any more than happiness can be pursued. Happiness and fulfillment have to be the byproducts of something else, of looking elsewhere. So we can practice this in our creative endeavors. It says to me that we have to make our work largely with one part of our capacities, but then we need to see it, to receive it, to find its true value and meaning with the other. And I've come to see that it's really kind of a back and forth. It's a right brain inspiration, and then a left brain, how would I paint that? And it's a right brain, see what's really there. And it's a left brain, how is it that I'm off track here? It's a left brain gets stuck in the details. It's the right brain eventually see, oh, there you are. There's the spirit of this thing that I've just created. Now to the present day, to the 2025 message. I have just really started to dive in to the world of AI. I have a Chat GPT account. I'm even paying $20 a month to be able to do more. I was using it to have it help me do some editing. I have these very long painting stories on my website, and I would dump them in there and say, could you please reduce that to 250 words? It's been brilliant with some things, really. But then I've started to hear how it's kind of having some people lose their way. Some people are getting a little deluded about what's reality and what's not. And the book that Iain McGilchrist wrote, The Master and His Emissary, is exactly the idea here. And it is a little parable about a spiritual master who becomes overwhelmed with all of the details of his life or her life and hires an emissary. And the emissary's job is to kind of interface with the world and to take care of some of the things that need to happen so the master can do the master's work. But then the emissary starts to take over and starts to run the show, leaving the master as secondary. I think this is exactly the message and the lesson with artificial intelligence. It's brilliant. I actually asked ChatGPT, I said, go to my website. If you go to the journal tab, there's all of these things I wrote over 3.5 or 4 years. Give me some suggestions for podcast episodes. It ingested all that took me all those years to write in seconds, and gave me a few reasonable suggestions. I mean, that's amazing, right? That's superhuman. That's beyond human. But then I need to be the one to say, no, I don't know. And it even made up a story about this very post that I was painting a heart shape and my left brain was being too critical and I needed to just go into the flow. And I went, that's a bunch of BS. I didn't actually write that. You made that up. And you're not in charge. I'm not putting that in this podcast episode because it didn't happen. The master needs to stay the master. And that's our right brains. That's where we seek meaning. That's where we are finding inspiration, where we're knowing what's ours to do in the world. And then our left brain, this emissary, and this massive left brain called artificial intelligence can do some things for us. There are some right brain qualities to it, like making connections, which is pretty amazing. If you haven't tried it, I suggest you do. But we need to stay in our right place with it, like we do with everything, to bring our humanity to the top of the stack and have it be in charge. That's my philosophizing for the moment. Thanks for hanging here with me. Thanks for listening. I so appreciate you being here. Until next time, bye-bye.